Hi, everyone. We are the Travel Squad podcast. We are doing some YouTube episodes because not a lot of people are traveling right now. And today we are talking about what it's like to be a travel podcaster. I'm Brittany.
Zaina.
I'm Kim.
And I'm Jamal. And like Brittany was saying, we have our regular podcast, the Travel Squad podcast. But since most people are in quarantine or not feeling safe enough yet to take that trip, get on a plane, we're bringing you these YouTube episodes for you guys' enjoyment.
So while being a travel podcaster might seem very glamorous, and it is, there's a lot more work that goes into it than you may think, and a lot more work than we thought when we started it too. There's a lot of business that needs to be had. And let's get down to business.
Specifically, when we're in the car, this has really interrupted Kim and my sleep schedule because Brittany's like, wake up, we got a podcast to outline.
Outline episodes, and I'm like,
You guys are going to get comfortable in your chairs at the airport. And I'm like, guys, let's get together. Let's, go ahead and outline an episode. There's a lot of work to do.
I just want to say something real quick before we get into it. Zaina doesn't have her virtual background of space up right now, but her transmission feels like it's coming from space. So if she's a little glitchy, I think that's where she's at.
Yeah, it just popped up that my internet connection is unstable. And I'm just like, are you kidding, dude? I pay a prime $75 a month for this. I'm just kidding.
Dang.
Zoom and quarantine.
Yeah.
I know, right?
So let's talk about why we started podcasting and decided on a travel podcast.
I want to claim the initiator on this one because I'm obsessed with podcasts. I listen to probably 20 podcasts a week of all different kinds. And I started trying to find travel podcasts. And, now that I am a travel podcaster, I found some really good ones. But at the time, everything that ranks is old white guys, or just, they're just kind of monotone. They don't really capture the excitement and the thrill that we all experience when we go traveling. And I wanted that in a podcast. Also, just wanted to show people, that it is not as hard as you may think it is. And so does anybody remember where we made the decision to start our podcast?
Absolutely. We started to make the decision while we were in Mexico City. We were down there to go to Zaina's friend's wedding, or our friend's wedding, Nicole, and we were in the back. Zaina, Kim, and I squished in the back seat of the tiniest taxi cab, and Kim spitballing her idea, and we made the decision there that we were going to create the Travel Squad podcast.
Well, you left me out of that. I was in the front seat.
Sure.
Don't act like I wasn't
You were there.
But, you ladies were squeezed up in the back, socializing. I was making sure GPS was going the right way when we were in the cab. But Kim came up with the idea, and then we started spitballing, and then just boom, now we have a podcast.
And we kept talking about it all weekend. Like every time we had a moment to talk about, like what would we talk about? How would the episodes go? Like what were our ideas behind it? And we kept continuously talking about it. And even while we were drunk at Nicole's wedding, we were still having the conversation on how we could make this happen. And I really feel like that night cemented it all together.
Yep, our motto, we are little cab people.
Yes, because the story behind that was when we got our cab at the airport, the guy asked me if, he looked at all four of us and he's like, do you want a big cab? And I said, well, can we fit in the small one? And he said, yeah, but it's going to be really tight. And I was like, great, we'll take the small one.
Well, I think it was more expensive for a larger vehicle too, was it not? Like, even though it was still going to be fitting us four, and it's not like it was a van or anything like that, the fact that it was larger, they were going to charge more. So we're like, you know what? No, we're going to get in the cheaper one. We can handle it. So we're small cab people.
And even before we created the podcast itself, we've been traveling as a squad, and we've even called ourselves like the Travel Squad or Traveling with My Squad and kind of referenced that. So it was just a real easy transition to make the Travel Squad podcast our podcast name.
Yeah, because I mean, we would always went off of NSOT.
NSOT. Yeah.
And you know what? True credit to Kim, because even before we started this one, I remember Kim hitting me up being like, hey, you should start a podcast. Let's start a podcast. And yeah, so this was born.
Yes, and so just after coming back from that Mexico City trip, we sat down to really drill into who is our audience and what is our mission with this podcast. And that's what I was talking about. One of our missions being to show people that if we can do it with full-time jobs and not being rich by, you know, anyone's really definition, and still travel as much as we do and as a group and go to the places that we've gone, we want to show people how to do that too.
I think the big thing too is like the biggest question that we get is like, what do you do for work? And like, what do you make? I don't think anyone's like outright asked like, how much do you make? But like, it's always the implication, like, how the heck do you afford all that you do?
Well, afford, and how do you do it so often? And that was the whole purpose, really, beyond going over our tales and talking amongst each other about how much fun we have and how fucking cool we think we are, because we're all of the above. But beyond that, we show in the podcast, you know, how we're able to do it, like Kim said, with the full-time jobs, not being extravagantly loaded. None of us are millionaires or anything, but it's possible. And so the podcast is there to inspire you guys. So that was one of the main things that we had to think about when we got started, beyond just telling the stories, is like, why are we doing this? And it's to give you guys that inspiration. I mean, look at my virtual background. This is from 35,000 feet in the air, seeing a sunset. And if, you know, you guys are listening to this on the audio and not actually on YouTube, this is my view from an airplane. Like, this is what should be inspiring you guys right now.
And my virtual background is a sunrise in Palawan, which is a very beautiful island in the Philippines with white sand beaches. And we woke up and went and saw one of the most incredible sunrises I've ever seen in my entire life. And just seeing this is just so calming, and it just makes me so inspired to continue to travel and see all of the beautiful things out in the world that there are.
Yeah, so once we had our mission down and we kind of knew some of the episodes that we wanted to get started with, we dove into the very complicated process of how to start a podcast in general. There is so much to learn.
I feel like we had to break it down by like week, like kind of listing out everything we needed to know and what we needed to do to get there. And then week by week, we kind of just chipped away. Like this week, we're going to focus on getting our equipment and ordering our equipment. And then the next week, we're going to talk about, or we're going to learn how to set it up and see how it actually works. And then the following week, maybe we'll talk about which episodes we're going to intro with or launch the podcast with, and then start to dive into outlining each of those episodes, and then also just even figuring out what our roles are within the podcast, because everyone plays a very significant part to make this all work together. Like Zaina is our website developer. She does all of the website content. Kim does all of the launching of the podcast and social media content. Jamal and I specifically edit the podcasts, and I help set up like our weekly meetings and kind of keep like a log of our episode logs. Have we outlined it? Have we recorded it? Have we edited it?
Organization and management.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of the organization and management, setting up all of those documents so that we have them ready for when we need them.
Yeah, because we're 4 people, so it's hard to coordinate all our schedules to the same time. So, you know, like Kim said a little bit earlier, you know, travel podcasting seems fun, and it is fun because, you know, you're going on the trip and then you're talking about it, but the podcast itself is a lot of work. You really have to plan out those details of, okay, we're recording on this date, making episode outlines. And, you know, even though it's, can't think of the word, but even though we're discussing
redundant.
No. Like,
I thought I heard an R from you.
Yeah, I was going to say regaling our trip. I don't even know if that's the correct word. Recapping, regaling, whatever. But anyway,
Regalivanting.
There's some times that you just forget something that happened. And so when we're all doing it together, it's all like pieces to the puzzle. Someone will be like, oh, do you remember this? And I'm like, oh yeah. And then it causes the other person to remember that. So when you're 4 people, it definitely helps to do the outline also.
And like Kim
Yeah.
said earlier, go ahead, Zaina.
Oh, no, go for it. Go for it.
Like I was saying, like Kim said earlier, she was talking about like, yes, travel podcasting is glamorous, but we didn't realize how much work this could actually be. And like we said, we all work full-time jobs. Then on top of that, we're finding the time to travel as a group or travel on our own. And then on top of that, we're also running the podcast. So there's so many different pieces of the podcast, like outlining the episodes and recording them. So all of it is possible. If we have the time to travel and podcast and work, you guys can definitely at least work and travel.
I want to go back to the planning portion of it.
Yeah.
By the time, from when we decided to do it to the time we launched was about 2 months. And in that 2 months, it was just work of researching. You know, there's a lot of articles out there about what type of podcast equipment to get, but when you have 4 people, it complicates everything and the equipment that you need and then how to work the equipment. None of us had ever recorded audio or edited audio ever in our lives. So to learn all of these things was a challenge, but it was also really fun when Brittany's like, I built an aggregator. And I'm like, what is an aggregator? And for our first probably month or 2 of recording, we didn't even have our headphones working because we couldn't figure out the software. And then we did, and it was like, wow. So because of how much work that was, we actually documented that whole process, and we're coming out with a course on how to start your own podcast, which is super detailed and all the information we wish we had when we started. So look out for that later. But you know, there's a lot that goes into the beginning, but I think what's so much more rewarding about it is like the actual piece of the travel, the recording is super fun, but then like putting it out there and getting the responses that we get from people we've never met and how they found it useful. I love that.
Also,
Yeah. And I just want to
go ahead, Zaina.
I was just going to say that we launched in August of 2019. And since launching, and then just also like a squad tip, you know, we released 4 episodes on the launch date. And then every single Travel Tuesday since, we have released an episode. And even though we're in quarantine, we're still on YouTube releasing something every single Tuesday. And I just want to say, like, it's not the easiest thing. It really takes commitment. And I think that's like really what we're talking about in terms of like, it takes time. Like a lot of the podcasts that you see out there, and it's not like knocking anything, but just like really seeing how consistent you can be versus other people. And it's not a competition, but you just realize like, oh my gosh, it's so much work because most people don't keep up that consistency. And for that reason, podcasts typically fail after about a year or so because it's a lot of work. And I think a big thing is just celebrating the little wins. Like Kim was talking about Brittany building an aggregate, or even just when we came up with our intro, it was so much work to decide between the song that we have, not the song, but the jingle, versus Texas Boots, because Jamal really wanted Texas Boots.
I was all about, I don't even remember what the official jingle name is that we use now for our
Backyard
intro.
Bash.
Oh, it's Backyard Bash, which I absolutely love. Now in hindsight, I really can't remember what Texas Boots sounded like, but I was all about Texas Boots and everybody was all about Backyard Bash. So there's a little bit of compromise, but yeah, just like Dan said, the little wins, you know, when we figured out how to use the headphones, you know, there's still stuff now that we're learning about podcasting to make the production quality better for you guys. And as we're doing these YouTube videos, we're going to learn how to make them better for you guys too that way also. But it's definitely a lot of work to actually produce and put out there.
And Zaina talked about commitment, and I do want to just touch base on that a little bit. When we first started the podcast, we said to ourselves, what is our commitment to each other and to this podcast? And we all agreed that we would be in this for 2 years. So we definitely put like at least the bare minimum that we would put in. And I feel like 2 years is a great commitment. And Zaina also touched on consistency. And I feel like that's really important because even while we're traveling, that also means sometimes we have to record more than one episode in a day so that we have something to put out for the following Tuesday, because the following Tuesday, we might not actually be here, or we might be on vacation. It's happened when we've gone to Lebanon together, where we've all been away out of country, and we just have to have that content for you guys in advance. And it does take more commitment prepping for the podcast leading up to a vacation, and even like the week that you come back, because when you come back from vacation, your whole life comes back. So there's so much going on, and our schedules don't always match up correctly. So it's just seeing things through and kind of pre-planning in advance how you're going to be consistent and remain consistent through your podcast.
Yeah, and I think it keeps us going when we get reviews on our Apple Podcasts from people we don't know who have said, I listen every Travel Tuesday, or I look forward to hearing the squad's trip every Tuesday. And so they appreciate that consistency, you guys listening to us do. Or when they say, I was planning my trip to Kauai and I found your podcast and it really helped me pick out where I was going to stay, or this was so helpful. So, you know, I've already said it, but I love the comments. I love the reviews. They're my favorite thing about the podcast.
Well,
AKA Kim wants you guys to leave us a comment and review right now. If you haven't done so, please go ahead and do us a favor. We love reading them. It brings a smile to all of our faces.
But even that, it makes what we do worthwhile. Like, one, we find it fun. Two, it's a business for us. But on top of that, when we actually hear feedback from our listeners, from our followers, and it's actually made their trip better or given them some good advice, and we get that feedback. I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier. That was our whole mission, is to inspire and to help. And then we're getting that feedback, like we're actually doing that. It makes it all that much more rewarding, because like we said, it is a lot of work. So we know that people are getting use out of our work.
And if you guys want,
I just want to,
who is your favorite of us four, we would love for you to put that in the comment as well. I mean, I know personally that I am everyone's favorite, but you know.
I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? Whenever we get a positive review, well, we don't even have any negatives. So the only reviews that we do get are positive. So thank you so much. And whenever we do, yeah, well, we'll screenshot it and send it to the group text. And it's just so exciting. And I think like something that's super exciting for me is like, there's not that many Kauai episodes out there. And so like so many people have found us because there's so few content episodes about Kauai. And so like that's super exciting. And then one of the really exciting moments for me was when we were about to record and we were debating on whether or not like people overseas knew where Idaho was. And Kim like basically said, you guys, we got to do it because we got a lot of fans in Australia. We're kind of a big deal in Australia. And to hear her say that, it just made me laugh, because you know what, we do have a lot of listeners in Australia, and that's so cool. It's like across the world, and they love our content and they're taking in our content, and it's just like, so there's just so much gratitude. Like my heart could burst right now on the screen from happiness.
Very rewarding thing to be a travel podcaster.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some more of the back work that goes into it. So, I mean, when we talk about like planning episodes, obviously we're always going to talk about, you know, trips that we take, but sometimes we have episodes that aren't trip related in terms of, you know, like how to pack or how to stay healthy while traveling. So, I mean, take one of you ladies, help me take us through the process of like how we come up with those. Because usually it's Kim and Brittany kind of spitballing those further ideas of like what other type of content.
So we actually kind of have like a little, I would say, algorithm where it's like every few episodes we talk about a specific, or we talk about a city. And so it's like every 5 episodes we're talking about something, we'll pick a city and it's something city related. Or and then like every 5 episodes, it's an international trip. And then so it's kind of the same kind of pattern where it's like we rotate every 5 episodes. So we have like city trips or hiking trips or international trips. And then we have a tips episode. And we've started to integrate a few different things. Like we wanted to do one health episode a quarter. So we've thrown that in. And we just we have a Google Doc where we've written down several ideas, and every time we take up an idea, we put it on the log and I take it off of that spreadsheet. So we're now integrating more San Diego episodes. So we've done an episode on San Diego hikes that we're going to be releasing soon, tacos in San Diego, brunch places in San Diego, like top 10 things to do in San Diego. So some of these we've outlined, some of these we've actually put out. So keep your eye out or your ear out on the content. But we kind of have like a little algorithm of which episodes come out on this schedule.
And if there's anything that you guys want to know about San Diego, please let us know. I mean, this is our backyard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things about the podcast is, we plan these episodes, but I love going through and outlining them. And yes, it can be a lot of work. And so when we talk about things in the past, it can be a lot of work because you know the majority of the trip, but you can't remember an important detail that might make the difference for someone that's doing a similar trip. So you have to go back and kind of do all of that research.
Right.
So
traveling as a squad for 4 years. So some of the episodes we put out was maybe a trip we took 4 years ago.
And that's what I was saying. That's how the collaboration of doing the outlines is like we all contribute to it, and then it reminds somebody of something that happened. So those ones are definitely fun because they help re-jog our memories, and then it makes for a more exciting podcast or content for that one. But one of the things that we're doing now, and this is what I was saying, or what we were saying, is how podcasting can be seen as something glamorous, but we're working while we're traveling. And that's what Zane was saying earlier too, with Brittany with the like clap, clap, wake up, Kim and Zane in the back seat, is because as I'm driving, Brittany is always on her phone starting to do the outlines, talking about, okay, we did this day in the morning and this and that, and always adding some content. That way we don't have to re-jog our memories. We're actually outlining our episode as we're actually experiencing our trip.
Yeah, so before we even go on the vacation, I'll make a Google Doc on my phone and I will start to outline the little things that we do every single day and just put in those details so that when we go back through and really outline it, we have the main things. And what we're adding in now is just kind of like our thoughts, our feelings, opinions, funny stories that happened along the way and that we kind of want to insert through. And I feel like that's great that we're kind of working while we're on the vacation, but it makes the process so much easier, I feel, than having to sit down later and think, what did we do every single day? But documenting the trips for me now is so much fun. Like, I feel like when you document the trip, it's like reliving it in the moment, and you just get reminded of like, oh, hey, remember when Jamal had a freak out? Wasn't that so funny? Or what about when Kim won't eat blah, 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 mushrooms, fish, God knows what. Or when Zaina got sick, do you remember Zaina getting sick 3 times?
Wait, which trip?
I'm just in general.
I'm teasing.
Like
because I get sick a lot, guys.
I just want to say, and I'm going to throw this out there again, maybe I'll get a little excited about something, but to call them all freakouts, Brittany, I mean, I don't know about that. I just want to throw that out there.
They're all freakouts.
I think Jamal's having a freak out right now. About having freakouts.
Anyone watching this video, if they're listening, maybe they could hear my voice, but if they're watching it, cool as a cucumber, man. No freak out. Brittany's all over.
Exterior, that's really when something's going on down there.
When I get my wrinkles in my forehead, that's when I'm really freaking out. But moving on too about the recording, we always get together, and like Brittany said, sometimes we have to do multiple episodes or in one sitting. That way we have that content for you, because we do have our other schedules, or we're going to be traveling. And then editing on top of that takes a really, really long time, in terms of putting in the music and the sound effects in the right spot. Or, sometimes when we're recording, I'm not going to lie to you, one of us has to get up and use the restroom, and then you're cutting off that like gap of dead space and then transitioning it. So there really is a lot of work that goes into the production, like on the back scene of things as
And
well.
when we first started, I had never touched any editing software in my life. And so I kind of learned like through YouTube videos on the fly, and editing takes a really long time. I mean, for however long you're recording the podcast, you have to listen through that entire content. Plus, if there's like any mistakes, you have to re-listen to specific parts. Sometimes you have to merge parts together. We have to add it, like Jamal said, we have to add in our audio. So like our intro audio or outro music, all of that. If we anticipate needing adding ads into our podcast, we have to find a spot where it's a good place to put the ad break, and then make multiple cuts and segment them all together so that the ads can go in. So it's quite a bit of work, and I didn't realize how much time editing took when we started this.
Yeah. Well, for every hour, would you say it's 3-4 hours or more sometimes?
I would say we can, in 1 hour of editing, we can get through like 20 minutes of content.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I know, because like just keeping up the website is a lot of work as well. There was something else I was going to say, but I know that like for editing, the other thing is that Jamal and Brittany, we record at their house, and they live next to an airport, a military airport. And so it's like you hear the airplanes coming, and then as soon as they're over you, the house shakes. No, I'm just kidding. I've only felt the house shake once, and it was a big airplane. But you know what I mean? Like you know that the airplane's coming, so you're in the middle of a thought, and you're like, just waiting for it. And then there was something else I was going to say.
Well,
I
even
can't remember.
I
think it just comes down to commitment.
I know, but even that, we have a cat, so sometimes like our cat, you'll like hear him come in and want to meow while we're doing stuff. So I mean, those are the little things that we're talking about, like editing or background noises in the community in which we live. So editing takes a lot of work, but on the promotion side of things too, that's really Kim's kind of forte on what she does for the podcast also, and that is a lot of work too.
Yeah, it's not just about planning it, recording it, and editing it and putting it out. Then you have to attract people to listen to it. So there's, we use Anchor to distribute our podcast. So luckily it puts it on everywhere you can find a podcast. So that's nice, but still you need to write show notes for your podcast that are SEO optimized. So when people are searching for Mexico City travel, they find you. All of the social media channels, and you shouldn't necessarily go and start every single one of them right away. We surely didn't. We kind of grew it as we grew ourselves. But in Instagram, to kind of visually represent what people can't see in the audio, connect with other travel interested people and travel podcasters. That's how we found a lot of our followers, who have become really good people who listen to us and have connected with us. We have one of our friends in Australia who we love chatting with. And then there's a Facebook group, or there's a Facebook page, and then there's your Facebook group where you want to build your community. And then there's a YouTube page like this. And so there's a lot of ways outside of just your podcast that you can attract your listeners and your followers. And they're all important channels that you have to consider and you have to maintain. It's not just to start it and leave it. It's the same thing as your weekly episodes. You have to, daily or weekly put things out there.
Yeah, you got to be consistent. And you just got to ask yourself, where is your ideal client? Where is your ideal avatar hanging out? Where are they consuming material?
Yeah.
But even though it's time consuming and it's so much work and more work than we anticipated, it's so much fun and I get so much out of it. It's very rewarding at the same time. And like Kim's already said, we love hearing from our audience. They really are the ones that keep us going, because you know, it's nice to hear from people we know in real life and they say like, hey, we're listening to your podcast. But when you don't know someone and they reach out to you and they say, thank you so much for putting up this content, it's really going to help me. You're like, oh my God, I'm so glad we're doing this. Yeah.
I mean, that's honestly my favorite part, because I would be traveling either way if I was putting out a podcast or not. So just the feedback, and I said this before and we've all touched on it, that's like the biggest blessing and the best reward of doing the podcast. And it makes all that hard work more rewarding when you get that positive feedback from our listeners.
Yeah, and just some of like the positive feedback. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. It's perfect. I was just going to ask if anyone else had anything they wanted to say that we missed about what goes into the podcast or what's rewarding for it. So you're right on cue, Xana.
Oh, perfect. No, I wanted to say that like the positive feedback that we've received has been like, and it's just like a testament to all of us of how well we fit together, is we've gotten a lot about how great our audio is. Like, and you know, Jamal and Brittany work hard on that audio. Like, we've gotten a lot of compliments on our social media, you know, about how nicely curated our Instagram is. That's Kim right there. We've gotten a lot of compliments about how nice our website looks. That's me right there. We've gotten compliments about SEO, about how we're like easy to find, or like we're the first ones to pop up. I mean, I just put in the website what Kim tells me. So it's a little bit of a both, but I think that's more Kim right there. But you know what I mean? It's just like every single person plays a part. And so I can't even imagine doing a podcast on my own, because we all play to each other's strengths. And thank you for all of that good feedback that you have given to us as well. We appreciate it.
And the last thing I just want to say is that we've come really far in the last year of working on this podcast, but we have so much farther to go. We've done a few episodes with guests, but we'd love to have on more travel-related guests and get other perspectives on travel. We would love to do more with YouTube and perfect our video skills when we can actually record together again, and just continue to grow our community and continue to help people and show people more about how travel really is. It's doable no matter who you are.
Absolutely. Any last thoughts, ladies, or was that it? And gents.
Well, I was going to say, you didn't include
and gents.
Wow. Now we know what you really think of me. No, I don't have any other final thoughts other than it's just fun putting content out for you guys.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. So everyone, that's all we have for you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this Travel Tuesday.
Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go find our podcast where it is out there so you can get all of our new episodes and travel videos that we have coming out pretty soon.
I was waiting for you to do the below, Kim, like below.
Right below.
There you go. And guys, you know, click the subscribe as we said, but also please do check out our podcast content. Get inspired to take that trip after quarantine. We have over 40 episodes on there ready for you guys to listen to, so be sure to check it out.
Yes, and if you found this information useful, or if you thought we were just plain funny, or you know someone who's ready to start their own podcast, please share it with a friend who would really appreciate and enjoy this.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.